Hey guys, Sammy here, host of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I love my podcast, as I've said several times, and I know that a lot of you have been thinking about starting a podcast or just interested in maybe getting involved. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about guest podcasting. So even if you don't have a podcast of your own, you can still dip your toe in the waters of the podcasting world by being a guest on other people's podcasts. It's a goal of mine in 2020 to be on 15 other podcasts. And so I invited Kelly Glover to join us today to talk about how to start the process of getting on other people's podcasts. Kelly Glover books podcast tours for entrepreneurs. She is the founder of the Talent Squad podcast agency and has 18 years of experience working in the media. Kelly has been a celebrity interviewer, talent agent, radio host, and podcast producer. She is here to give you behind-the-scenes look at how you can pitch podcasts, ace your interviews, and leverage those results. We have a wonderful conversation. I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. But before we hop into this amazing episode, this episode is brought to you by our private Facebook community. I really hope that you'll join us in the First Click community group here on Facebook. You can find it at facebook.com/groups/the first click. We have conversations about our goals, what we're doing. We have bonus masterclasses, all sorts of fun things in there. So if you're looking for a little bit more or you want to discuss more with us about what you've learned here on these episodes, please make sure you join us in our Facebook community. Again, that's facebook.com/groups/the first click. You can also find the link in our show notes at thefirstclick.net/podcast. But let's not wait any longer. Let's get to it. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hey there, everybody. Give a warm welcome, please, to Miss Kelly Glover. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you, Sammy. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been listening to you and you're as exciting, live recorded as you are on pre-taped. Great.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's nice. I appreciate it. So we're talking about podcasting today, which is a topic I love because I love my podcast. So why don't you kind of share with people a little bit about you and why you love podcasts as well?
Sure. So I'm Kelly Glover and I have a background in entertainment and media. So I've been doing that for about 18 years and was in radio. So my background is in commercial radio as an announcer. Because I've been in the industry for such a long time, podcasts actually were not invented when I was at university and just coming into radio school. So it's very exciting to transition into that area. So I love it because it's the radio that you can do without having a program director telling you what to do. No commercials, no music. It's perfect. It's all the talking all the time.
Yeah. I love to talk, and it sounds like you do too.
Yes. But what I love about podcasts as well is that it's niche. So broadcasting for the broad audience, you have to appeal to everybody. But with podcasting, I mean, there's even a podcast on escalators. There is a podcast on anything you want.
Did you say escalators?
Yeah, there's a podcast on, I always use that as an example because I continually get shocked. And then I find myself going back to cross-check and verify because I think, did I make this up? But no, it's real. There's a podcast for everybody on everything, and I love it.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is some people might think that getting into podcasting, it's too late to get into podcasting because it's been around for a long time, but it's still, I mean, if you stack it up against like YouTube or something, it's way less saturated.
Yeah, absolutely not too late. There's more than 700,000 podcasts at the moment, but a lot of them have pod fade. And like I said, get in too late for what? If you've got a podcast and you want to do it on escalators, how many are there? That it depends on niche. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it depends on your audience. It's on demand. It can be series. It can be for the year. You can go on other people's shows. There's so many ways in. And I don't think then that why does there need to be a limit? I really don't think that there is. The barrier to entry is low. My first podcast was in 2007. So that's a long time ago. We've come a long way. So I think now's the actual perfect time to get in.
That's awesome. So one of my goals in 2020 is to be on several, like I think I want to be on 15 other people's podcasts because I want to get more visibility and get out there and reach new audiences. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of how do you, like when you meet people and they say, okay, I want to be on other people's podcasts, obviously the research part is first. So do you have any quick, easy beginning stages for how to figure out which podcast you should even potentially pitch to?
Yeah, I would say the beginning stages are actually before that, Sammy, because before you start pitching, you need to figure out who you want to talk to, what you want to talk to them about, what action you want them to take. So you need to figure out your audience, but you also need to have your house in order. So is your website looking good? Are your socials consistent? Do you have your headshot? Do you have your one sheet? Do you have your press kit? Because you can find shows and pitch shows, but any host, as you would know since you're a host and you get pitched all the time, the first thing they do will cross-check and verify, and they'll go and check all those things. So before you start finding the shows, pitching the shows, you need to figure out, do I have all my visual assets, talking points? Is my messaging strong? Is my positioning strong? Do I know who I am and who I'm speaking to before you go and look who you want to pitch and then start asking them to come to their party? Like, what have you got to offer?
Yeah. And one thing that I know about people that speak on stages is they typically have their kind of signature talk, and they give that same talk at several conferences throughout the year, right? So they might be giving their exact same pitch exact same speech. Do you think that can also work in podcasting, even though like somebody might hear you talk about the same thing on several different platforms?
Absolutely. If you're an expert in your field, people expect you to stay in your lane and be an expert on a particular topic. If I'm hearing Richard Branson, Tim Ferriss, whomever it is, I want to hear them speak about entrepreneurship because that's what they're known for and that's what I want to hear from them, right? So you can't assume that every person that hears you is listening to every podcast ever invented, and people need to hear the same things over and over. So yes, develop your topics, develop your talking points, develop your hooks, and go down as far as, just because you're prepared doesn't mean you have to parrot it at everyone. It just means you have all your content to draw upon. So I would even get those sound bites ready and little catchphrases so you can pepper those in to your interview. So the more preparation, the better you will be as a guest. And another benefit of being a podcast guest is you will refine and define your message the more you go on other people's shows. So that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, I have found for myself also when I go on other people's podcasts, the different questions that they ask also help me, like you said, refine my messaging to understand, okay, well, this is what they think their audience is going to care the most about. It's almost like a little bit of market research.
It absolutely is. And same with the pitches that you send out as well. You'll find if hosts and producers are responding to your topics and talking points, and that will enable you to reshuffle your content. So if you think, I've got all these on my one sheet, but you know what, people keep asking me this and not this, then you'll know that people just aren't really interested in whatever topic that you're serving up to them. And if you're on a show and they continually keep asking you an area that you're not presenting, maybe that's something that you should include include in your pitch. So yeah, it's market research, it's refining, it's defining, I'm all about podcasts. And I love that you've got a goal for 15 in 2020. I mean, that's just a little over one a month. That's absolutely doable. Absolutely. And that's recorded in the bag podcasts. But with pitching, I mean, it's not a 1-for-1. Just because you find a show and think it's a fit for you doesn't mean it's going to be a yes. And podcasting is a longer timeline than other media because every host is their own media outlet and runs on their own schedule. It's not like morning TV where, at 6 o'clock in the morning, they've got to do the 24-hour news cycle. With podcasts, people batch well in advance. They'll record a number of episodes. You've got to pitch. You've got to get accepted. You've got to do the record. Then it's got to be released. So it is a bit of a pipeline situation when it comes to this media.
Yeah, because I'll say we're recording this now in the middle of December, and this episode won't go live until the end of January.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sammy, if you don't mind, would you like to share some of what you like when you get pitched, what you look for in guests as a host? Because I'm sure that's hugely beneficial to your listeners because they already know your show.
Yeah. See, we had this joke earlier before we went live that she was the host of the Zoom meeting. So I love it. No, for me, honestly, it's topic. So I have my 2020 calendar very well planned out as far as when my launches are and what I'm going to be promoting at different times of the year. So it's a combination of initially, does this topic fit in? Will it fit in with different things that I have going on throughout the year first, and taking a look at my schedule to see what that looks like. And some people, as you know, are pitching for they want it to launch at a specific time frame for things that they have going on. So I look at content first. And then if the topic seems like it fits and it's something that would benefit my audience and my listeners, then it's like you said, doing the due diligence, checking in to see, do I feel comfortable that they are going to be a trustworthy person? Is their stuff going to align with the strategies and the way that I present my materials, all of that good stuff. It's not even for me so much about audience size or anything like that. It's really more just about authenticity and then making sure that the content is relevant.
So what are you looking for in a one sheet and in a press kit and when you do your due diligence?
Really, it's just consistency and I guess the word authentic is bad. I mean, people can really put anything they want out there. And so you just have to kind of trust that what they're saying is real, but it's, have they been on other podcasts before? Do I think that they are comfortable in an interview type setting? Do they have kind of like what you said earlier, do they have something in place to kind of direct people to, like, do they already have some systems and things in place? Because to me that says they're in business to be in business, not just a side hustle and things like that. And some work better than others, and you just kind of go with the flow and trust your gut a little bit.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things is if you do want to be a guest on podcasts, it's all about elevating your brand. It helps with SEO. It helps you become a better speaker. At the Town Squad, we call it the speaker gig you can do without leaving the house, right? Yeah. So if you are starting out, you can get the tech for less than $100. Like one of the great microphones, it's entry level, is an ATR 2100. They're about $70. Little pop cover, $3. Any headphones is fine, a mic stand. Do you know what I mean? So I equate that to, would you go to a job interview in a pair of flip-flops and shorts? No. So if you're doing podcasts as a guest, the only thing you have is your voice. So you need to be presentable and dressed up. So that's a basic entry-level microphone. And the other thing is exposure, and think about it as relationships with the host. So when you're going to pitch a show, it's not, hey, I've got a book coming out, I want to be on your show. Your show's great. That's awesome. It's, here's what your audience is. I understand what that is. Here's what I talk about. I think that can benefit the audience. So it's going in, serving the host and the audience rather than asking for something. So that's just a little bit of a different approach, and that will help your credibility with the audience, your reputation. It's just benefit.
Well, and personalization, I think, is key. You can totally tell when you get those pitches that are canned, that they're just replicating the business name, the business podcast, and your name, and that's all that they're changing. You can see those a mile away.
Yeah, that if you ever see a template that says, here, take my template and just add in your own stuff, run a mile, because insert host name, really loved, insert recent episode, here's all about me, can I come on the show, is not going to work. You have to tailor it, do individual pitches to every single host, and prove that you know their audience, you've got something to offer the audience, you understand it, and you know that their show, and you're going to play the game as well. So you're asking to come to somebody's party. Well, what are you bringing to the table? So if you're strong on that and it's a two-way street, then absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you say too about showing up and just being present, and how easy it is to be on someone's podcast. I mean, literally you're not even in the US. And here we are, connecting over this podcast and having a conversation and providing value. You're providing value to my audience that I really appreciate. And I think, it's the balance of providing value for somebody else's audience, but it's just so easy. It's so easy to make these things happen. So, and people are hungry for content, right? I have interviews every single week on my podcast now, because we've switched to 2 times a week. And so I need people. And so if you can really make it easy for them and provide value, it should be a no-brainer.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with so many businesses, including mine, being remote. So I spend the summers in Australia and then the rest of the year in the US. You can reach a wider audience. So with us speaking about being a speaker at events, often that is limited by geography. But with podcasts, you don't have to pay for the Uber. You don't have to pay for the flights, the conference ticket, the hotel, the meals, wait at the airport to go through security. You can jump on that mic and do it for an hour. And, people would be willing to travel to be in a room with 500 people that are their ideal clients. So I think if you look at the niche podcasts, that is also as beneficial as being in a room full of your ideal clients. So thinking of it that way just changes the game.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some we've talked about a few of these, but what are some kind of big mistakes that you see people making when they're either researching podcasts to pitch themselves to, or just the pitching process itself?
Yeah. So the first thing is you need to have a bit of a list and a system in place for you to vet podcasts. So because it's two-way vetting. It's, am I a fit for the show, and is the show a fit for me? So the big guns, we always talk about Tim Ferriss. Everybody loves him. I've got a crush on him. He's amazing. But, if the last person on his show was Oprah and Gary Vaynerchuk, are you in that league? And if you've got 2 followers and you're just starting out, you pitching him, you might not be ready to pitch him. Doesn't mean you're never going to get on the show. You absolutely might get to that level one day, or you might bump into him in a coffee shop and he might say, yeah, come on the show. I would never discount amazing things that can happen. However, you need to look at the caliber of guests that are on the show, and are you in that league at this point in time? So just sort of know where you are on the totem pole and be ready to start at the bottom or with smaller shows and work your way up and get those runs on the board, because those shows that are just starting out today, in a year's time, they're going to have plus 50 episodes, 100 episodes. In your case, you're doing 2 shows a week, that's 100 shows a year. And if you get in on the ground level of those shows, you've got more chances of coming back and doing multiple guesting instead of just going straight in at the big shows. So I would say, look at the size of the show, look at the caliber of the guest, and then are you honestly a fit for that show? If, let's use a ridiculous example. If you're a vegan show and you don't want to go in and talk about barbecuing steaks, right? You know what I mean? Make sure that it's an absolute fit for you. And does it have guests? There's lots of shows that get pitched that don't ever have an interview and they get pitched. There are shows that haven't been, I've had a podcast that's been out of production for a few years. I still get pitched for that show. Well, I haven't had an episode in 4 years. Why? You didn't obviously look at when the recent episode was.
Right.
Or if it's a show that just has female guests and you're a male and you're pitching that show, well, that's not going to be a fit because you're not the type of person that they have on that show. So you need to do your homework across the board and also look at the back catalogue too, Sammy, because if I'm speaking about being a guest on podcasts and someone spoke about that last week and I'm going to pitch that, well, I haven't paid attention to your content mix. So I need to come in with a pitch that is different to what you've already had that either adds on to it or complements it instead of offering the same. So there's a lot of, and listen to the format. If you're a buttoned up person that's an accountant and it's a comedy podcast and you're not able to go with a joke, you know what I mean? So, or if it's swearing and you don't like that, or whichever way it is, like it doesn't matter. Like I said, there's a podcast for everybody and you'll find your fit, but just understanding where you're pitching to make sure that it makes sense.
Well, and paying attention to your business goals too. So knowing where you're trying to go in the long term to make sure that it kind of all plays together.
Yeah. And it takes a while to get your systems in place. You got to listen to the show. What are you listening for? What are you looking for? Is that even good? Then you've got to do the pitch, send the pitch, then you've got to follow up. Like it is a very long process, but absolutely pays off and totally worth it. And just know, like with you saying you want to do 15 this year, like I said, well, you've got to kind of figure out your pitch rate. So how many will you need to pitch to get those 15 locked in? Because it's not just finding, oh, Tim Ferriss, yep, tick, love to be on his show, done. It's not going to work that way. So you might need to find X amount of shows, vet the shows, then you're left with those shows, then you pitch those shows, and how many do you end up with?
Yeah. So for me, I've definitely front loaded as far as, my first 90-day plan for the first quarter. We've definitely front loaded quite a few pitches to happen, or research and pitches to happen in the first quarter of the year, because like you said, it could be a longer lead time. And so we don't want to just say, okay, well, we're going to pitch 10 in the first quarter,
Yeah. So I'd love to hear about your process. So for the 90 days, how many shows are you looking at to vet? And then how many are you looking at to pitch?
So we're looking at vetting and pitching. Well, starting to work on building our database in January. And I say we, but it's me. Hopefully I'll get a VA in the mix here in the next month or so. But really, I have a goal of pitching by the end of the quarter at least 20 to 25 podcasts.
Great. That's fantastic. Yeah. So you might have to go through, I don't know. It could be any amount of shows. If you're because you're in podcasting, you have a pretty good idea of who the shows and the hosts are, as opposed to somebody that's coming in cold and they have to figure it all out a little bit. So I think that's an excellent goal.
Well, and for me, it's also thinking outside of the box. I mean, I'm in marketing, so it's easier I can pitch to a wide variety, but even for your niche brands, thinking outside of the box of, if I have my escalator podcast, what kind of things do they talk about? I need to look that up. I am intrigued.
Yeah, I think it's called like Moving People or People Movers or something like that. I just heard about it and then I go to listen to it and I'm like, oh, I always get distracted by another awesome podcast.
But I think if you think about not just things within your industry, but complementary industries,
absolutely,
it really opens the door for kind of, a little bit more creativity and maybe pitches that they haven't heard before.
Yeah. Being a guest on podcast is all about looking for the white space. So what is nobody else talking about but should be? And what do you offer that you can teach that someone, because podcasts are edutainment, right? That's such a geeky dork word. I get it. But really, why do people listen to podcasts and reverse engineer it? They want to learn something. They want to be entertained. So you need to, as a guest, like, yes, it's about you. Yes, it's about your book. Yes, it's about your expertise. But people want something that at the end of the episode, they can go and do and implement in their own lives and business. So what can you teach as well as entertain and tell stories?
Well, and then how do you feel about, I know different podcasts have different philosophies on this, but with people that come on as a guest, how forward or kind of pushy should we be about, hey, I also have this freebie, or I have this download, or I'm in this launch mode? I mean, should you expect that you have an opportunity to push your product or service on people, or should you completely leave that out and just, hope for the best?
I would say it's up to the host. You're a guest in somebody else's home. You can mention, I have a giveaway that I'd like to offer your audience, and then it's up to them, or just leave it up to them to ask. It's standard practice in a podcast interview at the end of the interview for the host to say, where can we reach you? You know what I mean? And then, but I think one of the mistakes people made, and you were asking a little bit about that before, was I've got a freebie and I've got an Instagram and I've got a course and I'm here and I'm there. Like, I would say stick to one call to action. And in your interview technique, so we were talking, it's about getting ready to pitch with your one sheet and your media sheet and your topics. Then it's finding the shows and pitching the shows. And then once you're booked, it's about knowing your keywords, staying on message, giving your examples, and peppering it in the interview so you don't leave it to the end where people have to figure out what you do, what your expertise is. It's peppering that in the interview without being like a jerk and a weirdo and sleazy and just not fitting in, so people have that understanding all the way through.
Yeah. Well, and building that trust with people. I mean, the beauty of being a guest on somebody's podcast, you already have that immediate little bit of trust, right? Because
it expedites the know, like, and trust factor more so than any other medium, because you can hear from my voice and you can tell if you like me, if you like the intonation, if you like the energy. You either like me or you're turned off by me. Either way, that's great for both of us, because we'll figure out who you like to work with, right? The audiences are niche. The audiences are engaged. If you are reading a blog post or scrolling through Instagram, whatever, you're just going to read the headlines, look at a picture, forget about it. But in podcasts, people look at it like they look at a book. I'm in the middle of a podcast is terminology that people use, because they don't look at it as starting it and stopping. You don't read a chapter of a book and quit. You read the entire book. So if you get in a car or you're doing a workout or something, you start listening to it and then you always plan to finish it. So 86% of podcast listeners listen to all or most of the episode. So you're getting 30 to 60 minutes with your audience, as opposed to 3-minute segment on the Today Show, quick couple of headlines, scrolling through Instagram. You know what I mean? So the intensity and the personalization and the time is far more than any other medium.
Well, yeah, because video, I mean, you have like 3 seconds to grab somebody's attention in video, and watch time on video is way down.
Yeah, so you have to look at an Instagram post. You can't be doing, you can be listening to something else, or you have to read the book.
Right.
But with podcasting, you can do something else at the same time. So I think that it's beneficial in that way for audiences, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and just like you're saying, the emotion, you hear the emotion behind it, makes it more real. Like, I feel like I know you better because you're talking to me. I feel like you're my friend because you're talking in my ear. And I'm listening to you all the time.
Yeah, it's the know, like, and trust factor. So if you think about all the touch points that everyone speaks about in marketing, I might see a blog post, I might see a video, I might see an Instagram, I might go to the website, like all these different things. If you spend 30 to 60 minutes speaking to someone, you're going to get much better idea. And so I feel like one podcast interview is worth, 10 other touch points in other medium. It really expedites that know, like, and trust factor. And you get an idea, like you like someone or you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You either want to work with them or you don't, and then you'll go and cross-check and verify. And I think that's awesome. Not everyone's for everyone. You don't have to. Not everyone loves it. Like, work with the people that you really like and just vibe with.
I agree with that so much. And it's the same thing. If you find me to be annoying in the podcast episodes, then I don't really want you buying my membership program, because you're not going to like me there. Even if you like the content.
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
Because if you're a client of mine, I'm on your case, I'm asking you to do stuff, I'm telling you all the things. Some people love that, and some people are like, whoa, step back. So, and that's perfect. So it's inviting the people in that like you, and it's repelling the people that don't. And that's just, like I said, it's good for everybody. It wastes nobody's time.
Yeah. So would you say, how many podcasts on average do you think you are a guest on?
Oh, me?
The year? Yeah.
Oh, I can record up to 11 in a week. But like I said, I'm an ex-radio announcer and I used to do 6 on air a day.
Wow.
So I find myself batching. I'll go through phases where I'll book a bunch of shows and batch them. And also it depends if I'm in the States or in Australia with time zones. So I love early. So the ideal time for me for doing podcasts is people might, I'm just going to prepare you. It's very early. So just when you hear this number, you might freak out listening to this. So I get up at 3:30 in the morning and I start my first podcast interviews at 4:30 because it's nice, it's quiet, it's the best time for my brain to be turned on. I do that and then I do my work after. So for me, that works. For other people, they might want to do it in the afternoon. So I can do, 3 podcast interviews before somebody even has turned up at the office. So that suits me. But again, my business is booking guests on podcasts, X radio. I love doing them. I'm not the normal, but I expect for a podcast to, people often start out with doing 12 interviews or 20 interviews. And if it's a launch, depending on what they want to do. So I'm a strange beast with the amount that I do. So the expectation isn't that. And you can just start at your own pace, like you've got the goal of 15. Awesome. Something we say at the Talent Squad is practice in private before you go public. So this is a great medium for introverts as well. Because if you don't want to look at, I'm not really keen on getting up in front of an audience and looking at 5,000 people in their eyeballs because then suddenly I forget my own name, So that's why I love radio and podcasting because it's one-on-one. So just as a little behind the scenes, we don't even have our video on right now.
No.
So I'm just talking to myself in a microphone. So is Sammy. So for introverts, this is the ideal marketing tool, honestly.
Well, and it can be edited.
Oh, absolutely. Usually it's edited, but I think you need to go in with the mindset of it's live to tape.
Oh, yeah.
That it's recorded and it won't be edited and it's always a hot mic. So in radio, unless you want it to be broadcast across the air, don't say it.
Right.
But have the comfort that, you can have something edited out in most cases. And podcasts, it's not, like I said, it's not the Good Morning America. So it's not live and it's most business owners that are doing this themselves and they want you to look good. They're not trying to trick you. As a guest,
right, what's the point?
They want you to look amazing. It's not 60 minutes. They want you to look amazing. They want you to sound your best. They want to sound their best. If something happens and you say, look, is it possible to edit that? I'm sure it will be. Everybody, it's win-win. Like we're all on the same team to educate the audience. It's just for wins.
Yeah, we don't do a ton of editing. And in fact, if you listen to certain episodes, there's definitely flaws that come through.
But that's the beauty of podcasts and why people love it is the rawness. If you want polished and pre-recorded, listen to commercial radio.
Right. But I was a guest on someone else's podcast earlier this year, and I don't even know if it went live or not, but I had a really bad cold and I literally had a massive coughing fit right in the middle of the recording.
No.
And I felt so bad. And she's like, don't worry, we can edit that out. So it's like situations like that where you say, okay, we can, or there's been times where I completely lost my train of thought when I've been interviewing somebody. I'm like, I was going to say something real intelligent and I totally lost it.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah. So it's nice to know that you can kind of collect your thoughts, come back to the table. And we also interview on this podcast, business owners who aren't marketing experts or maybe have never done a podcast. And we kind of brainstorm and troubleshoot things. And so I like to let them know, we can edit things out if you feel like maybe you said something about your business that you didn't actually want to say publicly. Like you said, it's just peace of mind to know that option is there.
Yeah. And then if you're a guest on a show, you can always ask the hosts prior to the interview, will it be edited when it's coming out? You can have your little list of questions that you'd like to know, just so you know up front. But I would always say go in assuming that it's live to tape. If you do make a mistake, a little trick is to just pause for a few seconds. And then what that does is that will signal to the editor. They'll be able to see in the waveform where it goes silent and they'll know that that's where the cut is supposed to be. And then you can just restart what you were saying again.
That's a great tip. So let me ask you this. Have you, and this might be maybe something you don't want to answer, but have you ever interviewed somebody for a podcast and then been like, that was terrible, we're never going to actually air that?
That's a good question. Oh, yeah, people in media, it's called spiking the interview, getting spiked. Yeah, that happens. Has it happened with a podcast? No, but I mean, I've done other podcasts where you interview lots of people and they don't make it to tape. So you cannot expect as a guest that you will make, like if you come out and start being all salesy, or you're not a very good guest, or you're not giving complete answers, or you're just going off the rails, just know the host does not have to publish that interview. Well, I've made all the mistakes, trust me. I once did an interview with a Hollywood celebrity that the recording didn't work. And I had to go back to the radio station saying, I know I just went to this red carpet interview and I have no audio. Sorry. So, and what it does is once you make mistakes, you know what? That's never happened again. It happened that one time. I've had phone calls go across air. And I know that this is radio, but it's still the same concept of you make a mistake, you're going to make a mistake, you'll learn from that mistake. And that's why it's better to start on the smaller niche shows than go straight to Tim Ferriss and screw it up on your first big platform.
Right. Yeah. Make all your mistakes at the beginning when you don't have any listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't go straight into the NBA. You start in Little League, right?
Well, and I think that also brings up another point about kind of the goals of your podcast, because we all would love to be on New and Noteworthy, and there's all of that good press and that makes you feel good and whatever. But depending on your niche and your industry, it's just pitching people that are not Tim Ferriss might even be better for you anyway with your audience and going after the small podcast.
Yeah. So I think the mentality in podcasting, and again, it's new, we're all learning, we're all just becoming exposed to it, is I need to go on a show. The show needs to have tons of downloads and listeners, and I'm going to make money from getting advertising or the amount of downloads. I invite you to switch that thought to, what about the relationship with the host, and what is the cost of the product that you're selling? Because a CPM, which is cost per thousand, is about $25. So for you as a podcast host to make $25 from a commercial, that is 1,000 people that need to listen to that, right? Well, not all podcasts have thousands of people listen. So if you want to make $100, if you want to make $100, you need 4,000 people to listen to your show. That's a lot of people. Or you can have one person and have a $500 or $1,000 product, you know? So you don't need 4,000 people to make that money. So if you're looking at money, think of it that way. And sometimes the guest or the host could be your potential client. And depending on the cost of whatever you're selling or product or training or coaching is, that is hugely more lucrative and beneficial than downloads and how many people listen. So it's not about the number of people listening. It's the number of people that are coming into your ecosystem and buying. So think of it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I like to bring guests onto my podcast because I feel like it's doing a better service to my audience by, you know, I could talk about podcasting from my perspective, but if we want to dive a little bit deeper, that's not my area of like complete expertise, right? And I like to bring in people that can really help support the strategies that I'm already teaching. And so I just think sometimes people worry about getting somebody on that's going to overshadow them or not make them look good. But I think it's a better service to listeners when you have interviews, authentic people like yourself that can come in and share and shed light on a perspective that I can't provide.
What's that saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
Do you think all the people that do all the interviews think they've got higher celebrity status? I need to be the interviewer that has the better status. No way. No. I think that's a different. Yeah, I think your attitude is absolutely correct. And podcasting as a guest and a host, it's high level networking as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about the content. It's not just about the audience. That's what I mean. It's multifaceted. It's such a good vehicle for so many reasons. And you can repurpose the content. Plus, it's all about your own positioning as an expert in the market. So when people are looking you up, they might not end up on your website, but they might end up on, because of SEO, on someone else's website with your interview with them there. So that's beneficial. If you're like starting to pop up in hundreds of interviews on other people's media and then you're getting backlinks to your website, brilliant.
Yeah. And And that's a great point. I mean, also researching kind of how they handle their show notes and things of that nature on their website when you're vetting and kind of figuring out whose podcast you might want to be on.
Yeah. So talking about the call to action and can you offer a free product? Well, I don't know. I feel like we're all getting a bit overwhelmed by the free product get exchanged for the email to get on someone's list and all that stuff. Sometimes it's just knowing the person, having them in the back of your mind, starting to follow them. And then when you Google something, then popping up as well. Mm-hmm. So I think if we all read, it's a long-term strategy. It's benefits on so many levels. If we adjust our thinking and put the effort in, it will pay off over the time. And recently I had a potential client come to me to be booked on podcasts, and I ended up hiring them on the phone call when they were trying to hire me because they were awesome. So that's how it works. So I've hired many people, and it happens a lot of times in podcasting. You'll work with the person that's the guest or the host. So I'm sure they were laughing all the way to the bank. You know, that was an accountant, and that's a year-long contract. So look how that works out sometimes. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we've had that happen too. We've had people that have been on our podcast and they have referred, because, you know, you build that trust and that rapport, they've referred other people to us as clients, which is great because it's a much easier sell because they're getting referred. It's a completely warm lead.
Yeah. It's like going on a dating app or your friend saying, hey, here's Michael, and I've known him for 5 years and he's awesome. Like it's already somebody, it's a referral. It's brilliant. Mm-hmm.
So one thing I want to touch on, because you and I both have podcasts, we pitch, but the beauty of this too is even if you don't have a podcast, you can still be a guest on other people's podcasts.
Yes. And the thing about podcasting is pod fading, which is people getting excited. They do all the stuff and realize, oh my God, I've got to do a podcast every week for the rest of my life. It's way too much. I'm in over my head. They pod fade. So I always suggest go do a podcast tour first. You can look at how other people handle their podcasts, see what goes into it, and then decide if it's something that you want to do. So I would rather be at a guest at 50 other people's parties than host my own.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then
it's just great way to learn.
Absolutely. So don't feel overwhelmed like I have to start a podcast. I have to start one today. And don't feel overwhelmed. I have to do a podcast interview a week for the rest of my life. Start where you're at. Do what you're comfortable with. Practice in private before you go public. Make sure you've got your ducks in a row and test it out. But don't put it off.
Yeah. So if you don't have a podcast and you're trying to be a guest on someone else's, what types of things would you add to your one-sheeter to make somebody feel comfortable that you can speak well?
So
that wasn't even a very eloquent sentence.
Yeah. So are you saying if you've never been on a podcast before?
Yeah.
Well, someone's going to give you a chance and go for the smaller ones. Go for people in your network. Go for shows that are just starting out. And then you'll get, it's like a little bit of a portfolio, right? You're getting your press kit together and you can say, okay, I've been on this show. The other thing is, I guess, if you wanted to give a sample, you could just do a little MP3, put it up on your site of a sample interview and get somebody to interview you if you wanted to do that. Or record a video, and people just want to see, as a producer, I just want to see that you can string a sentence together, that you know what you're talking about, and all that cross-check and verify. So I can listen to someone for 30 seconds and figure out if they're going to be a good guest, and most hosts can as well. So, and that could even be as much as a Facebook Live, a YouTube. They just want to see and hear you.
That's awesome. Well, you've given us so many great tips and things to think about. I really appreciate it. So here's your standard, like we talked about, core moment of if people want to know more about you, Kelly, how do they find out about you and kind of the services you offer with podcast pitching?
Sure. So thetalentsquad.com. That's all you need to do. Go and visit me there. And the other beauty of podcasting is, you hear I've got an Australian accent, but you've probably got a picture in your mind. What do I look like, right? So this is a fun game of go to thetalentsquad.com and see if you were correct. There's an added element for the call to action. It's always good to do a little bit of a visual call to action. So give that a go.
That's a fun one.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I always think, what do they sound like? And then you make it up in your mind and see if you're correct or not.
I've done that with radio hosts, like morning shows and stuff, and you go and look. It's never I'm never right.
So good. There you go.
Cool. And we'll link everything up in the show notes for this episode so that you can just link directly to that. But Kelly, I really appreciate you joining us today. This was awesome.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure you and I can talk to the cows come home. So yay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yay for podcasts. Yay for podcasts.
Cool. Well, we'll catch up with you soon. Big thank you to Kelly again for joining us on this episode and sharing all these amazing tips and tricks with us. I will have resources linked up in our show notes at thefirstclick.net/podcast. And I hope that you'll subscribe wherever you listen so that you don't miss out on an episode. We put a lot of fun and love into each episode and appreciate those of you that are listening to us on a regular basis. And if some of these topics have been awesome for you, make sure you share them with a friend. When we all work together to build our businesses, everybody wins, and it's just a much bigger impact that we can make on our community and the world. So thank you again for listening, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.